Hello and welcome back to another episode of Critical Reactions with your host Bryan. We're going to check out some more Alcest, as we just did a little bit ago. Let's do some more, right? That makes sense. It is a special selection though. One of y'all chose what I should be listening to. This one comes from Sam. This is, in my opinion, Alcest's most beautiful song. The title means On the Iron-Colored Ocean. So we're going to be checking out some Alcest. This one is Sur l'Océan couleur de fer. We just got done listening to Elevation from them. If you want, you can check that one out. I'll put the thing up there. Use the wrong side. Anyways, let's dive into this. See what Alcest is doing for this one. What's interesting is they're consistently putting the emphasized beat on beat 2 of a bar. Actually, I take that back. I think I was counting it wrong. It's on beat 1 now. The clean vocals are a nice change of pace from Elevation. I like the bass down there, nice and resonant. Cool little inflections. Having the vocals kind of get washed over by the reverb was a nice effect too. So we have an 8-bar phrase, 4 chords, mostly being shaped, not strummed together, and the vocal melody on top of that, creating 2 moving ideas, bringing in the vocal harmony. Though I can get behind this. That little uplift, oh, that was so good. We're kind of suspended right here. I don't know if we're going to drop back down or keep rising with the positive writing. Yeah, it's a cyclical thing too. All 4 chords there sort of pointed to the next one. There was no resolution in any of that. little turn there with the two chords back to back in that fourth or eighth bar. Really nice. Return to this cyclical tension, rising energy with the vocal layers though. Nice. We had like a tom and light splash cymbal combination that almost sounded gong-like. And it ends up working really well for the atmosphere. Very chill. That's a cool little melodic lick right there. And the reverb just kind of hanging over. Yeah. Yeah, I can get behind that. You know, it's funny because back-to-back Alcest is something I think I need. It's sort of a running joke in the community that they're the band I can't remember what they sound like, and if you check out my reaction to Elevation that I released just an hour ago or so, it's one of the first things I said, that I wasn't expecting that. Despite Alcest giving me exactly what they typically do, it was still unexpected for me. I just, something about their type of shoegaze slips my mind all the time. So it's nice having them back to back, where I get a little reminder of who they are, and then this, which I think is very cool. It's interesting because I think on the surface, there's a lot of stuff in here that I can just repeat what I said last video. And I'm sure I will repeat myself a little bit. I do like to keep all these reactions as self-contained as possible. So I don't want to say, hey, go check this other video out if you want to know what I think about this song. That just doesn't seem very fair to your time, and it doesn't respect your time. So I'd like to keep everything as concise and contained as possible. But what I find interesting is that just by changing a couple of sounds, we've actually created a song. that I enjoy without actually changing anything of their identity. This is very much still Alcest, at least as far as what goes on paper. Uh, what would be in the sheet music? I don't think much is different here, but it is something vastly more palatable to me. And I love that. They didn't really change what they wrote, they just changed the sonic representation of it. And it completely alters my relationship to the song. Because one thing that I've kind of criticized Alcest for in the past is repetition. They're very good about creating a vibe, an atmosphere, an aesthetic, and sticking with it for a very long time. So much so that even on Elevation, I said that the time of the song wasn't justified. That I would have cut it down by 25 or even 50% and would have wound up with a song that didn't lose much. Could I cut this one down? Sure. Sure. Are there moments that just kind of, in a sense, I'm using loaded vocabulary here, but does the song drag on at times? Sure, I think so. But it doesn't feel that way to me in the moment. Everything feels calculated. The length of phrases feels necessary. Now, part of that, I think, comes down to one key difference: melody. The inclusion of a freaking melodic line. This alters everything for me. Elevation basically had no melody, had melodic ideas, sure, but they were ostinatos. And technically, we do get that here as well. The vocal lines are not totally linear, but they are lengthy enough to feel linear. They're working on 8-bar phrases, and even then, each subsequent 8 bars has a bit of variation to it. Maybe a different rhythmic flow to match a different series of words and sounds. Syllables, that's the word there. It's words and syllables. Maybe there is a slight different pitch inflection. Instead of going up and coming down, maybe on the third time we start high and come down. Just little changes like that are going to create some contrast in the flow of the song. All of this stems from clean vocals. And it's something that I wish Alcest would play around with more. And maybe they do. Maybe it's just not in what I've been exposed to. And this could be another time that I'm just forgetting the kind of music they make, because for whatever reason, they're a very slick band. I can't get them to stick in my mind. But yeah, I think just the simple inclusion of melody and slight variation in the melodic ostinato or the melodic riff or phrase, whatever you want to call it, allows the song to be as repetitive as it wants underneath that and still feel like it's constantly moving. It never really feels like it stagnates. Now, granted, this song is also half the length of Elevation, so that might be something that goes in its favor as well. But I do find that there's enough variety in the melodic element here that keeps my interest. And that melody even shifts around too. We have the center pan vocals for the first verse, and then there's a pre-chorus possibly where we have the right panned falsetto stuff, which I thought was a really nice contrast. Not too long after this, we had both vocals harmonizing with each other. That was really nice. And so there was enough space here too. There was some instrumental bits, and then we returned to a center vocal focus. And when we came back to that falsetto right pan stuff, that felt fresh, even though it was really only like a 3-minute gap between the times when they showed up. It was like, oh yeah, this part. It had been long enough for it to sort of fade out of my memory, hyper focusing on the present in so many places that it's like, oh yeah, that was nice. I'm glad you guys revisited that. I think the only time the song really drags a little bit is towards the end, and that's when it's purely instrumental, focusing on the single guitar riff and a simple bass phrase underneath that. And you just have to be in the mood for that atmosphere because that's all that's there. But even that, I think, wraps itself up rather quickly. We only listened to that 8 bar phrase 3 times, 4 times, probably makes more sense. And then we have the slight turn into the outro, the fade out, the last 10 or so seconds of the song. And because I wasn't hyper focused on that guitar work throughout the song, because it was ornamental, background, secondary to the lead melody, I still checked in at times. I felt what the guitar was laying down, but once I understood it, I was allowed to move on to the melody and see what was going on there. Whereas something where elevation, there is no melody. And the drums and the vocals are very monotonous, being just blast beats and harshes. So it pushed me to the guitars, which were hyper repetitive. And that's what kind of built up my wariness of that song. But this one, the other ideas are there. I can listen to them. There's some beautiful stuff. But as soon as I've grown tired of them, I can get directed back at the vocals, which have movement. It's a larger idea in general, a 32 bar phrase in totality. Granted, broken up into 8 bar chunks that are mostly variations of one another, but there's enough change in there for me to say that this is a much larger idea. And I think that's really what this type of music needs. For me personally, I'm a fan of contrast, of ideas going places and not stagnating for too long. And that's obviously not what Alcest is. They like to sit in a vibe, in an atmosphere, and chill and take it in and meditate within it and be present in that moment. I'm always looking ahead. I'm wondering where things are going. Where are you going to take me? It's a destination versus journey thing, and sometimes journeys really work for me, sometimes they don't. And here, I was, I was loving the journey. We'll put it that way. I really liked the way they went and took place. And I really think a lot of my enjoyment doesn't really boil down to the fact that, oh, this isn't really black metal, but it's just the sheer inclusion of melody and melodic layering and harmony in melody. All the things I typically ask for in music. They took something that's still distinctly them, but did it in a slightly different way that resonated with me more. And I really appreciate that. I think it works well. Now, the other obvious change is that this isn't black metal. It's not black gaze either. It's acoustic guitars with electric bass, I would say, underneath, but clean electric bass and some vocal work. We get some light drumming towards the end, but it really, honestly, right until this moment, I was like, did we even have drums? I was like, oh, yeah, actually, we had that tom cymbal idea that I thought worked really cool. So we had some drums in there, but they're very light. They're very much pushed to the background, enough to present a beat, but not to overpower the song at all. And that gentleness resonates through all of this. None of these songs are, or none of these sounds are aggressive. It's a vast shift from elevation, from their general black gaze sounds. We've moved away from the aggression of the what's that word? The compression of it, the static, the white noise, the overdrive, to just kind of a raw acoustic guitar. I'm sure there's some production put on it to sound good and to mix well with everything else, but it's just a guitar. A little bit of extra reverb on it, I would say. Just the guitar, just the bass, just the vocals, and I love that. We had that bridge in elevation. I was like, I like this because we've stripped it down to an acoustic guitar and I can hear what they're playing and how the notes work with each other. And this song just kind of hyper focuses on what was a small idea in Elevation. And I get to hear all of the interesting harmonic ideas that they have present without having to listen through the noise of the production, the compression and the overdrive and all of that. It's just the harmony, and I love it. It's beautiful. It really is. There's a gorgeous movement to the chord progression. As I mentioned, it's mostly chord shaping. The guitarist never really stops playing a consistent rhythm. Was it constant eighth notes, I think it is? Always rising and falling, moving around the chords, and picking key notes out of the chords. Not necessarily arpeggiating, although there are some arpeggios in here, but just generally shaping out the chord, playing some key notes from it as they rise or fall in order to sort of allude to the chord. If they had played all of those notes simultaneously, just a nice strum across all of them, you would hear that full chord, but instead they just play one at a time. It's still the chord, just presented in a different manner. And this is primarily what we get from the guitar. They give us the chord, they give us that harmonic foundation to the song, but they're also playing the rhythmic part. As I said, the drums aren't always present, and they're also providing a moving idea to act as a sort of counterpoint to what the vocals are presenting melodically. The guitars end up carrying triple duty on this, and it just sounds so great putting it all into one simple line. It's very concise, razor honed writing. You don't need three instruments to define rhythm slash tempo and harmony and counterpoint. Just make one instrument do all three of those with a single line. It's very efficient, effective writing, and it comes off as something that feels very light and effortless because of that. It's not a heavy sound. We don't need multiple layers in order to achieve all of this. And so it feels very light and intimate because of it. Now this lightness, it shines through everything. The general chords are rather light, not necessarily bouncy, but definitely not heavy, not dark, not weighty in any way. And having just the two instruments, the bass, well, actually the bass is a third. It makes the song feel intimate, small. It's not a very large, bombastic sound at all. The production is also very light. There is no extra aggression or compression put in here. It's just the instruments. The reverb on the vocals and guitar add a little bit of extra density to the song, but not in a way that feels weighty. One that almost feels like it lightens these instruments by creating a bit more of an ethereal, foggy, or misty sound to them, almost removing weight from them as they become a bit more of an like a displaced echo. The whole song then, I was honestly waiting for a bit of contrast on it, something punchy to bring in some metal, to contrast it, and it doesn't. It sticks with this, and I think that's a brilliant move to go for. One, because sonically I just really appreciate that sound, but also because it shows restraint. We'll get into the lyrics in a second, and maybe it would never make sense to bring in a metallic contrast to this, but it's just something I expect with black metal, black gaze, adjacent bands to create this contrast. Anytime there's a lull, a moment of softness, it must be hit harder with a big moment. And we actually saw this on Elevation, the other track from Alcest we checked out today. We did have a couple quieter, more somber moments, and they were used to contrast big metallic sections. So I really appreciate the restraint here to just say this is the mood we're going to be in the entire time. And so this song ends up coming together really well for me. It's very serene and calming. The production emphasizes harmony and melody over aggressive atmosphere or noise. We have clean vocals, and just generally there's melody. throughout here that I can lean on, since what creates the atmosphere of the song is a bit more monotonous, more repetitive. Now, monotonous is the wrong word. Repetitive is the word I want. It ends up being something that helps me appreciate the atmosphere that Alcest is already fantastic at making, but presenting it in a way that I can enjoy myself while listening to it in a casual sense, more so than just appreciating it from a critical or artistic one. And I think that's awesome. I'm glad we got to have both of these back to back today. Very cool seeing the two sides of Alcest, and fingers crossed, I remember their sound in the future. I remember them as that shoegaze, the black gaze band that also plays around with melody at times. I'm gonna hit some lyrics on this, see what's going on there, and then we're gonna wrap this video up. Alright, just like Elevation, this song was based off of a poem. Interestingly, despite all of the lyrics in here, there's only 8 lines of unique. Actually, it's only an 8-line poem. I don't know where the repetition comes from that would give as much space for the lyrics as it is here. So I don't actually know, like, maybe are all 8 of these lines repeated throughout? Do we repeat the first 4-line stanza multiple times and then finish the poem on the second? I actually don't know. But I just want to point this out, that there is a lot more lyrics in the song than lyrics on the paper. It says, I'm just going to read this, and again, it is translated from French, so I don't know how accurate this is, but it seems to get the general gist across. On the iron-colored ocean cried an immense choir, and those long screams whose insanity seemed to pierce through hell, and then death and silence, rising just like a black wall. Sometimes, in the distance, could be seen a swaying fire. Unlike Elevation, which seemed pretty clear to me, a very poetic, flowery way to describe meditation, I'm not sure what this is about. It says that there is a choir that sounded like insanity that could pierce through hell on an iron-colored ocean. What is a silver ocean? But then there was death and silence, and in the distance a swaying fire. Sometimes a swaying fire. I don't know. This one's a bit too metaphorical, and maybe if I just had a little hint about what it was about, I don't think it needs to be spoon-fed to me. I just need to know what the metaphor is, and then I can extrapolate all the lines out from there. But yeah, I'm a bit lost on this. And the idea of screaming sounds of insanity loud enough to pierce hell, and then death and silence, pairing all of that back to the music, yeah, I don't know. I don't hear any of that. This is a calming, soothing track. There is that one cycle of tension that shows up twice in the song, where each chord has a little bit of tension to it. Not enough that I would say it needs to be resolved, but enough that it sort of points towards a future resolution. All of them do this. It's just a cycle of tension. Not rising tension, not falling tension, just a cycle of consistent tension with no resolution to it. That's the only point in here that I think I can relate anything at all to the lyrics, and even that's just a vague thread of, oh, look, it's a song about some screaming sounds that are very intense. And there was this little tense portion of the song, but like at no point do I think this all lines up really well. So I feel like my take here is off. It's wrong. I mean, I barely have one to begin with. So I'm gonna wrap this up. These are my thoughts, though. What are yours? Do you have an interpretation on the lyrics or the music in general? Is there anything you'd like to add on to what I've said, or correct me on anything that I've said? Let me know. Put that stuff down in the the comment section. Above that, in the description box, you'll find a link to Linktree. It takes you here. You can find links to my music, ways to support the channel, a link to the Discord server, and so much more. Above that, if you could, like, subscribe, and ring the bell. I greatly appreciate all three of those. Alright, that wraps it up for today's Alcest Day. I'll be back tomorrow, though, 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 10 p.m. UTC as usual. Until next time, remember to be critical, not cynical, of the music you listen to, and have a fantastic morning, afternoon, or evening, whenever you choose to watch my videos.